Here with us today, three of the best VCs in Brazil and Latin America. Next to me, Izabel Gallera from partner I Canary. She joined very early. She helped build the fund, one of the best seed investors, early stage investors in Latam. Before that, she had many years as an operator in tech. Next to her, Santiago Fossatti, partner at Kaszek, one of the largest VCs in Latam, 2 billion assets under management. And investor in many companies such as Creditas. We had Sergio in the first panel today. Before that, he worked as a consultant. He comes from Argentina like me. And in the end, Marcelo Lima, GP at Monashees, another one of the largest VCs in the region. Again, investor in many amazing companies, some of them here today with us, Bija Pomelo. And before that, yeah, also worked as a consultant. I think we can kick it off. We had many questions coming in through the app, talking about the current context of the markets, and that's actually the title of this panel. But I think we'll start taking kind of a bird's eye view. Let's trying to take some perspective. I think especially Marcelo and Santi, you've been investing in Latam for more than 10 years. Bella, you have a more recent perspective. So I think if we could take a step back and not look at the current context, but again, look at the last 10 years and look at what has changed in Latin America, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. You know, from an investor perspective, from a founder's perspective, what would you highlight, Marcelo, if you want to start with you?
First of all, hi everyone. Thanks, Tommy, for the invitation, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's a good question. We have been around for like 17 years now. I have been with the firm for 13 years, so we see a lot of ups and downs. And important to say, I think one of the major evolution in the market, and this will not go back, is the quality of the teams and the founders. I think in the past was very hard to find amazing founders and especially talent to join the companies. And I remember probably Brian or Santi, they will remember this. We had in one of our boards a VP of product from Facebook. And I remember that once he told us, guys, don't take me wrong, but the quality of the talent here is on a different level. You guys are not playing the college basketball, not even NBA. And there is a huge of a gap. And I think he was right, but that was only the picture, not the movie. The reality is Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, there was a lot of talent. And the talent was only going to other things. Consulting, banking, multinationals. And now this talent is joining companies. Companies like Latitud, Creditas, Flash, Loft, and this is very good, or creating their own company. So I think that was the major transformation, the first. The second was access to capital. So when we started, when a company would get money from Kaszek, Monashees, several times we would say, there's no stage finance in Latin America. So you have to see this as the latch check, maybe a follow-on, not more than that. And today we see founders like Series B, C's, D's, and E's. And of course, now there is an adjustment. We will talk more about this. But the adjustments going back to like 2014, 15, that was the status quo. But today there is way more capital, way more funds, spending time, coming, they have companies in the portfolio. And I think on top of that, we have a huge market, both B2C, B2B, consumer, smartphone penetration. We have companies actually buying a lot of software. And 10 years ago, this was completely different. And if I stop now, the next question would be, but how about the exits? The other thing that we have, and we heard this from our LPs for almost 10 years, yeah, but how about the exits? So finally now we're having exits, like M&As, IPOs, local IPOs, NASDAQ IPOs. So all of this is it's kind of, the wheels get in motion, and it took like 10, 15 years, and now, even though there is a correction, the long term, it's positive.
Thank you, man. And Jan, we'll get into some of those topics later. Santi, any perspectives on this?
Yeah, so I totally agree with everything that Marcelo said. It's completely different game. In our case, we've been part of the ecosystem for 23 years. And in 2000, there was, when my partner started Mercado Libre, there were no people online in Latin America. And 2010, perhaps, I don't know, 20, 30% of the population was online, but nobody had a smartphone, so the use of technology was much less widespread. And what had happened, it's funny because we went back to our first deck at Kaszek from 2011, and we had this slide where we said, okay, the value of all of the public tech companies in Latin America at this time, it was $5 billion. And we tried to make a guess and project and say, okay, 10 years from now, this could be $100 billion. And it sounded crazy at the time. And when we did this analysis, when it got to 10 years, the number was $120 billion. So it was even larger than our widest dream. So that's what would happen with the ecosystem. Everything is positive. Like, these tech companies become the best brands in technology in Latin America. Mercado Libre, Nubank, Kava, Quinto Andar, Creditas, many others. And they're among the best companies, tech companies in the world. And that was unthinkable in 2011. Like, today, the best neobank in the world is from Latin America. The best e-commerce company outside of the US and China is from Latin America. It's amazing. And I think that we all agree here there's a correction going on, but this is only the beginning. What technology can do to people's lives, we still have not seen a fraction of that. So 10 years from now, I don't want to give a number of what would be the magnitude of the impact, but I'm sure that the top 5 or top 10 top companies in Latin America will be technology companies. So we are still in the very beginning of this ecosystem, but the evolution was much more than what we dreamed. I remember also meeting with Marcelo in 2018 in his office, and we were discussing, I don't know, Mercado Libre was worth $10 billion at the time. And I told him, like, imagine when one of our companies get there, remember? And many got there. So it's always surpassing our expectations. So very, very excited.
Thanks, Santi. Bill, do you have, like, with your perspective, you've been investing in Canary for several years now. What's your take on this?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, very nice to be here, Tomi. Thank you for the invitation. We're so honored to be partner of Latitud since the beginning too. I've been around. Canary has been around since 2017, so a bit later, right? Those guys have started much earlier, so I'm privileged to be landing in a more fertile soil in 2017. But I'll go back to our premises when we started Canary. That I think those really resonate with development and maturement of the ecosystem. When we started in 2017, we knew there was a wave of very talented people leaning towards tech companies, either taking the risk and starting their own companies or joining teams that were already starting. So for us, from 2017, Canary's deal flow, like we call the teams that we analyze to basically part of our investment process, we were analyzing 30 deals per month in 2017. Today,
how many?
30. So, and that has changed a lot today, and that was like 100% of the teams that actually knocked on our door or we had access to. Today, we're talking to, analyzing 300, so 10 times better, higher than 2017, and that means like a small percentage of the deals that actually that we actually have access to or are in our radar. So the deal flow has increased a lot. That means that talented people are willing to take risks, are willing to build huge companies in Latin America as a whole. And the other thing was, well, capital. I'm sure we'll be double down in that topic. But when we started in 2017, there were, well, only a few funds, like global funds, really willing to take the risk in Latin America. Now it's different. I know we're currently in a market state that is not necessarily the highest point, but I'm sure we are much better in terms of number of funds and willingness to invest in Latin America than we were in 2017. And again, I only have like 5-6 years since we started operating. those two, Monashees and Kaszek, they've been around for longer. So, I totally agree with Santi. We're still in the starting point. Everything that we can build in Latin America.
Amazing. Thanks, Bel. Talking about the correction now, right? Like we have the app of the event. You can ask questions there. I was checking the questions, and the top 5 of them refer to the current context of the markets, right? And many early stage founders here just anxious in terms of what does it mean, what are the implications, how long could this be? I won't ask you to give me an answer to that question, and then especially what can founders do, right? How can they react to? Maybe Marcelo, if you can start. Thank you. By the way, he just landed from the US, São Paulo, like an hour ago. So thanks for being here too. But yeah.
No, it's okay. Thanks. And yeah, I think probably in all these current panels, the discussion is about the adjustments. We're all seeing it. And first of all, looking for the short term. And I think it's very important to understand that there's a reset in the market. There is less capital available. There is less risk appetite. So it's important for companies to try to optimize burn, cut costs, try to extend runway. And the fact is, a lot of funds, they have a lot of dry powder. So the capital is there. The big billion-dollar question is how long it's going to take for us to get back to our normal capital deployment rhythm. Nobody knows. So if you have time, it's going to be better for you to navigate the storm. So it's looking for your costs, looking for your runway, looking for your valuation, and try to buy time. And this means, like, it's not that you are going to stop growing or anything like that. It's just being very smart about how you're building the business, focusing more on the unit economics, the fundamentals, your burn. And that said, and I was mentioning this, in 2014, 17, we saw Brazil in its worst economic crisis. And companies were still growing, but our advice for the company was like, there's no state finance in Brazil, so you have to control your destiny. The best way to control your destiny is not to be profitable, is to have a break-even optionality. So you see the next fundraising as an option, not as a need. If capital is available, you raise. If it's not, you keep executing. Of course, not all the companies have this optionality. It's more like Series C's, D's, Z's. On the early stage, you have to do is guarantee that you have a business, and business depends on unit economics and sustainability, and have time. That said, and this is short term, there are few companies in our portfolio that are very well capitalized, that actually the advice is the opposite. It's no competition, a lot of capital, M&As in the market, so now it's a time to be slightly more aggressive and use the crisis in your favor. But this is, as I mentioned, more the exception than the rule. But one thing we can never forget, this is a long-term game. It's not a short-term game. So I was talking about short-term, and we say that VC is not driving a car. So when you're driving a car, you pay attention to the road, and you change the direction, you even hit the brakes. We like to say we're in the business of flying a spaceship, so it's long-term, and we pay attention on the mission. We pay attention on the planets. So as Santi mentioned, a lot of amazing opportunities. Our pace is the same. So we are going to do the same number of deals that we planned in January that we did last year. So capital is going to be there. For startups, it's more how you react in the short term to guarantee that you will be there. And regardless of the capital, I think there was a lot of crazy things happening in the last 2 years that shouldn't happen. So now it's also good to have this discipline to guarantee that after all this thing, regardless of capital, you have an amazing business that will outlast you.
Makes sense. Thanks for that. Santi, I know you usually you can throw a cold water on this type of things, but what's your perspective on the market?
Yeah, so the way that we see it is that what was weird was the last 2 years. What we are living today is an amazing year for technology in Latin America by every metric that you might look at, except when you compare it with 2021. But 2020, 2021, capital was free. and a lot of things in our economic system broke for a while, so valuations went through the roof. And now we are back to normal, back to the mean. If you look at, I don't know, fintech multiples, software as a service multiples, they were doing like this, and then they did like this, and now they are back to the same trajectory that they had in 2018, 19. So I think that there was a lot of entrepreneurs that, as Marcelo was saying, are playing the long game, and this is obviously a challenging time because capital is going down. This regression to the mean hurts, but they are thriving in this ecosystem, and those who were feeling it was easier, or they are back to realizing how hard it is to build one of these legendary companies. And again, we were saying this, we want to have the 10 largest companies in Latin America being tech companies. I don't think this crisis changed everything towards that objective. I think that, of course, you need to adapt. Market is different, capital is more expensive, valuations are lower, and you need to thrive in this new environment. And it's much harder to thrive now than last year, where everything was getting funded. So definitely most challenging, but part of the cycle. And those who thrive are the ones who will build the legendary company. So not very different to what we were seeing in 2018 or 19 in Latin America. Just it's different to the last 2 years.
Makes sense. Thanks, Santi. Well, we'll have Julio from Atlántico showing the report later. So you got some very good insights, and I think many of them are aligned to what Santi was saying. But as a pre-seed and early seed investor, how do you see this new market, and what recommendation you have for early stage founders?
Yeah, well, I agree 100% with Santi. I think we're seeing the high standard deviation if we think about the last semester of 2021 compared to now. 2021 was a huge outlier from our point of view. So now we're grounded. The industry came back to be maybe what it's supposed to be. Our advice for early stage founders, for Canary invested founders, has been, well, just like Marcelo mentioned, you have to increase your runway. You have to buy more time. And that's basically being more efficient, focusing on unit economics, focusing on operational efficiency. And most of the Canary invested companies actually are pre-product market fit, so they're more resilient. I think we're privileged in that sense in terms of timing. But of course, later stage companies are suffering more, especially because of the standard deviation compared to 2021, where the music was playing, that was playing was hyper growth, right? So you prepare your company, you prepare your muscles for hyper growth. And when you're not dancing the hyper growth song anymore, you have to go back and be more efficient. And we're seeing the cost of that. The cost of that are layoffs. Some companies are not being able to actually, guarantee health economics. So we're seeing the cost of the standard deviation. Honestly, I think that's unfortunately part of the game, since the music that was playing was hyper growth. But I honestly believe the crisis make very great entrepreneurs and make very, very sustainable and great businesses as well. So we're completely optimistic with the future for tech companies. We truly believe that the next generation of great companies in Latin America are going to be tech companies. Hopefully Canary-backed companies too.
Thank you, Bel. And I think, we'll talk about this later, but all of you are still investing actively in the early stage in LATAM, right? So, but again, we can share a bit more about that in a bit. Marcelo, you were referring to the stage financing as one of the key differences in the last 10 years, right? Like downstream capital being available, Kaszek or Monashees not being the last check. But there's still, and that improved, of course, but there's still like a big question out there, which is, okay, how much downstream capital is there out there, right? After you folks, like how does the company bridge from that C to Series A to a liquidity event in 7-10 years? And of course, in the last year, with some companies some funds pulling back, such as SoftBank, that question is out in the air again. So if we can maybe, if you have any thoughts about that, I think it's worth double clicking there. How do you see that maybe in the next 10 years?
Yeah, and actually we had our LP meeting yesterday, and that was one of the questions. Is like, okay, SoftBank was the major investor in the region, Tiger, how about now? How about downstream capital? And I think the answer is, in 2014-15, there were like 5-6 funds in the region. When Brazil entered the crisis mode, everybody disappeared. It was very, very hard to fundraise. Now, and we did this analysis to see the breakdown of capital between all the funds. There are like dozens of funds spending time in the region with portfolio companies, coming to Brazil, going to Mexico. It's a completely different order of magnitude than 2004-15. So I think there's still a lot of capital available for good companies. Maybe the bar is slightly higher, but if you have a good business, if you're playing the long term, capital will be there. And in several cases, in term sheets that were won by a few of these names that you mentioned, these companies had other term sheets as well. They got like 3-4 term sheets, and they decide to partner sometimes with SoftBank, sometimes with Tiger and a few others, because they saw the value. So I believe that it's good that we have a fragmentation with a lot of new investors, and they're here, they're still coming, they're still excited. And if we compare Latin America with Asia, for example, India, Indonesia, it's like they also have a lot of capital. Maybe they have more funds active than here, but the GDP here is higher, the income per capita.
I think let's keep going. The team will probably solve it. Thanks for the patience there.
So it's just a great combination of GDP, smartphone user base, income level per capita. So, of course, we pay a lot of attention to potential funds, level of capital, but if you do your job, the consequence is you will have investors interested in your business, and it's good for us that finally Latin America is in the map. So if you talk with the major funds in the Valley or in Asia, they talk about Latin America, they send people here. So we continue to be excited, cautious, optimistic about capital being available.
Thanks. Sandy Bell, any comments on that?
Sure, no. It's funny because that's the same question that we got 11 years ago when we started Kaszek. Yeah. And our answer was, we strongly believe that great companies will be able to fundraise. At that time, we did not have the evidence, but it was what happened. Even during the hardest times, the crisis in Latin America, international investors pulling back, the new banks, the Quinto Andars, they were able to fundraise creditas consistently, and of course there were less competition for deals, less term sheet, but also less competition for clients. So in a way, I think these things, great companies and great entrepreneurs will figure them out. It's not what really worries us.
Well, for me, I think the answer is straightforward. Santi and Marcelo can lead the rounds after Canary, right? And, well, they're here, so. But jokes aside, we're seeing a lot of interest from global funds as well. That shifted very quickly from the last couple of years to today. So to give you an example, yesterday, Canary held an event, a summit for invested companies alone. And we invited global funds that could lead subsequent rounds to join. There were tons of them, of investors, global investors here in Brazil, here in São Paulo, just for the event. And that means their interest. I mean, Brazil is not a closed country to cities in the US, nor Europe, nor China, nor Korea. But all of those investors came for our event, which is one example alone. But every week in our office, we have events from, again, global funds willing to meet with invested companies. They're doing the research. They have capital. They have willingness to invest in the region. So we're very excited that more funds, literally a higher number of funds, long-term thinkers are coming and are willing to invest. we're going through a global crisis right now, right? So that's why, things are moving slower, let's say like that. But we're very excited.
Thanks, and we're lucky to be yesterday at Canary's event, and this event, I think, like, starting to build also this kind of invitations for them to come down in person. That's good, and this afternoon we have a panel with some USVCs and recent Founders Fund, Harlem Capital. And yeah, that's great. But it's very important also to hear about your view on downstream capital, beyond early stage investors. Switching gears here for a second, from a more personal note, right? You've been investing, all of you, for more than 5 years. What kind of makes your eyes shine? What makes you light up in this job? Of course, it's working with founders, but what is that after 10 years, 5 years, keeps getting you excited? When dealing with these entrepreneurs, and if you want to use a specific case, that always helps. That's one.
Yeah, I would say it's like usually 3 things. The first one is really, and we do research, we prepare our minds, but just enough to encounter great entrepreneurs. So I think the first thing that is amazing is when we sit in front of an amazing founder and we leave the meeting with a lot of energy, excitement, and he kind of changed our point of view or the way that we thought about something. We feel the ambition, we feel everything, and we get the conviction. Of course, still a lot of work to do. Like, for example, case of Flash, when we studied the benefit space and we had a lot of doubts if it was possible or not, and spent 30 minutes with them, and we left the meeting like, these guys will do it. So this is just amazing about our job, is to meet with someone that has been studying that thing or living that thing for years or months, and in a few minutes they can make you so excited about that. So this is the first thing. The second is, when you really do your job, there's helping founders. And it's very easy to be an investor when things are doing well. It's challenging when things are not going well, and you can really help and add value, like now, for example, in the current environment. In our case, for example, we did an investment in a company called Neon. 2 days after the PR, central bank shut down the license of their bank partner. And there were like 3 days working nonstop with the team to really help them to navigate. So it's a kind of amazing part of our job, is to really feel that it's not about the money, it's about helping. And then the last thing, it's about see the impact. Like, see that what founders are doing, the ambition is turning into kind of reality. Like, for example, 99, we invest in the early days, like seed, and then a few years later, almost no tax stands in Brazil anymore, and suddenly they were acquired. So seeing the impact, the exit is part of it, but sometimes it is smaller. It's like you talk with customers, like not early adopter, like my mother using a product that a customer is founder is designing. So this is the amazing part of our job, is be excited, be able to help, and see the impact in the world at the end of the day.
Thank you, man. Yeah, Belle.
Okay, I'll go. I'm going to give you an example that can seem romantic, but please know that our job is not romantic at all. But yeah, my personal, what lights me up personally is meeting people and enabling their dreams. So when we, or myself, when I meet someone that wants to be a founder, but sometimes it still doesn't have even an idea or co-founder, or is still maybe in their jobs as an employee in a company. But when I know that that person wants to become a founder, wants to start something, and I bond with that person and I try to help that person throughout the way, throughout the discovery process, throughout the co-founder dating phase, throughout the ideation phase, throughout the validation, everything related to the setup of starting a business. I have months or sometimes years to actually meet someone, to meet a person, meet a future founder, and enabling hers or his dream. And well, that lights me up. It's a long-term investment, is not scalable at all, but more than 40% of Canary's invested companies we invested because we knew that person before they had the business, and that helps us because, again, it's easier for us to get conviction that that team is the team that we want to partner with. I have many examples. One is a company that, we co-invested with Kaszek. It's called Super. Rafaela is the founder, and I met her when she was still in Quinto Andar as an executive, and I helped her throughout the way of actually figuring out what she wanted to do. Another example of another very strong women founder is Oya Care. I met Stephanie when she was still in London before she moved to Brazil. Helped her throughout the way too. So for me, seeing Stephanie, Hafez, and other many founders actually building their companies is amazing. And being a part of their journeys, it lights me up. So it lights me up a lot.
I love that. And we were talking yesterday with the team. With Latitud, we help companies incorporate, right? And we say every time we're helping a founder incorporate, it's actually someone taking the jump and becoming an entrepreneur, right? And leaving maybe a corporate job. So yeah, I love that. Santi, what makes your eyes shine?
Yeah, so it's many things. We really enjoy what we do. I think it's this combination of working closely with the same people for many long time. Like, I don't know, our relationships are 10, 20 years. At Kaszek, we are still investing new capital into companies such as Nubank, where we invested 10 years ago when it was a seed, a PowerPoint. And we'll probably continue a relationship with the company for 20 years. And it's that combined with making the impossible possible, like that thing that this industry has, this type of impact. Like, we would have never dreamt of having a company that has 100 million customers, right? That's what really drives us, that scale of impact. And it's every stage of the journey that we enjoy. The 0 to 1 is amazing, the first few hires, celebrating the small things, launching the first product on an app store, getting like Apple's approval that is always a pain in the neck, like very small things, raising the first round and being part of that story and evolving that relationship. It's really amazing.
I hear you, and again, at Latitud, we come in before Monashees and Kaszek, and before Kaszek even with the fellowship, which is equity free, and we see all these folks just thinking of becoming founders, right? Founders to be, and it's amazing when we see them taking that jump. So let's get into, I think, for founders here in the audience, maybe one of the most interesting parts, right? Many early stage founders that maybe don't know you yet or don't have a relationship with you, folks, many times they ask us about insights, like, are Monashees and Kaszek leading seed, or are they've grown too much already? Is Canary doing seed but also pre-seed? So I'm just making some very basic examples here, but they want to hear and understand how you're investing, especially now with the new market, right? So I think for me it's like now kind of diving a bit deeper on what you're doing right now. Canary just raised a 100 million fund. Congrats on that. Where does that take you? What are you doing right now in terms of deployment of the fund?
Yeah, sure. We raised a $100 million fund last year, actually, 2021. And we're investing this third vintage as we speak. Canary, let me go back. Canary, we started in 2017. We're a Latin-focused fund. We like to lead the first round. That means that we can lead pre-seed, seed, Series A's, whatever is the label of the first institutional round. Canary is the first leader. That's our sweet spot. And that can mean, again, no labels, first round. That can mean PPT stage. That can mean that you have a little bit of traction already. Usually means that you've not reached your product market fit yet. But you asked about the fund, the latest vintage. We see Canary as a program investment. So we start in 2017, and each 2 years we usually raise a new vintage. So having raised this last vintage means that we're still active. We're doing our job. We're still, with the same strategy. Of course, more refined, since we have much more information than we did in 2017. So everything that we do is refined with time. Our pattern of recognition is much more much more rich. Sorry, we have more data, we have more information, we have more quality information, not only quantitative one. So we're very, very excited to be able to continue our strategy here in Latin America. It's still very early to state anything regarding our vintages, our fund. But again, we're still in the half of the first one that started in 2017. So we know we have a long way to go, and venture capital is a long-term business. But yeah, we're selective.
That's great to see. Santi, Kaszek turned 10 years last year, no? Congrats, you raised 2 very large funds, I think 1 billion in total, if I'm not mistaken. Where would you say you are in the life of Kaszek? And going back to my question, are you doing seed? What are you doing in the earliest stages?
Yeah, so in terms of the strategy, we invest throughout the life of a company. We really like to start our relationship on the early stage. So we've done multiple deals at the seed, pre-seed, for me is the same thing, stage, of companies that is just like a strong team with a big dream. We are also very active in Series A. We might do a Series B here and there. And then we can continue deploying capital and even leading new rounds until a company goes public. So we're active through the lifetime of a company, but we start on the early stage, our relationship. And in terms of the life of the firm, I think this is something that we all share at Kaszek. It's what we were talking about, the ecosystem. We are at the beginning of the ecosystem, so this is the first year of Kaszek. What we did in the past, it was more than what we expected at the beginning, but it's still nothing compared to what you can do. And even when you think about new technologies like cryptocurrencies, biotech, agriculture, artificial intelligence, many of the things that we do will change and will be done by tech. And we really believe that Latin America needs to be one of the strongest tech regions in the world, because if not, we will fall behind. And we are seeing the way the world's evolving. So we want to help many, many entrepreneurs continue building some of the strongest companies in the world out of Latin America. That's our ambition. And that ambition doesn't end, because technology will always be more relevant. So we will always be on the beginning of what could be built. This is a never-ending process.
Super clear, and yeah, hopefully we'll have Kaszek and Monashees and Canary for decades. Marcelo, you keep raising new funds. I know you now are investing way more actively in Hispanic Latin America, non-Brazil. I know you have a team in Mexico in the ground too. So a similar question, where are you in the life of Monashees, and how are you investing in the early stages, which is most of the audience we got here today?
Yeah, so first thinking about Latin America, since 2015, we start to deploy capital regardless where you are. It can be Brazil, Chile, Colombia. It really doesn't matter, because we realized, especially with a company that we did the seed that was here presenting Rappi, is if we want to invest in the best teams in Latin America, several of them are not going to be starting in Brazil. They might start anywhere. And if we see our companies recently, 40% of the capital was deployed out of Brazil. And in several cases, Brazil becomes a very relevant market afterwards. So it's not about where we are investing, it's more about where the company is starting. It's like Real, for example, it started in Colombia at the end of the day, and then Brian decided to come to Brazil. And we're seeing this over and over, like Tu, Frubana, Adi, Voila, and the boundaries between the countries in Latin America are getting smaller and smaller. Okay. So we look for the best people. And then what we have done is to build a platform that can deliver value on top of that. So having people on the ground, like in Mexico, in other parts of Latin America. Of course, Zoom facilitates everything, but having a portfolio in other parts of Latin America, having LPs in other parts of Latin America. So this way we can really deliver what we promise. And this has been the strategy in the last few years, is looking for teams, regardless of where they are, and be able to help these teams. And in terms of our strategy, we have two strategies. The first one is early stage, is regardless if it's a seed, a pre-seed, or a Series A, we want to work with the best founders in moments that we believe we can help. And in a way that we can have relevant ownership and be able to help. So if we do a seed or a Series A or a pre-seed, it doesn't matter. We will spend the same amount of time. So if it's a seed or a Series A, you have like a partner, you have the same structure. For us, so when we decide to do a seed, it's a statement for us. It's a company that it's not an option that we are buying, that maybe we'll put more capital. It's like, there's no different kind of seed sense at morning. Oh, this is the seed, this is the A, or it's the same thing for us. So the early stage strategies look for the best teams and invest. And then we have I will call opportunity fund. There's more to keep supporting our companies during B, Cs, or even pre-IPO rounds. So we believe, like Santi mentioned, with these two funds, we can help the companies over their kind of lifetime.
Yeah, and that relates to the previous question about downstream capital. With you folks growing in terms of assets under management, that's also great news for the Latam companies. Cool. We're getting into the two final questions here. I promise. Going a bit deeper on what you're seeing in the market in terms of industries, verticals. Like there's, you can say, okay, there was a first wave of innovation with internet penetration, then mobile. Like what's the next kind of, sector agnostic? Is it Web3? Is it AI? And then kind of maybe double clicking in specific verticals. Like, okay, we saw an amazing wave of B2C fintech. Are we seeing waves of B2B or infrastructure fintech? Looking at those different types of theses or industries, what's getting you excited right now in 2022, 2023? I think this is especially relevant for some founders here, founders to be, they're still in ideating, maybe doing the Latitud Fellowship, looking for ideas, looking for thesis. What do the best funds in Latam, what are you looking at? Bella, if you want to start.
Yeah, sure.
A few ideas if you want.
Of course. I have to say that Canary is not a thesis-driven fund. We invest in people regardless of the industry and business models. Of course, we look for businesses that can be potentially huge. So there are a couple of markets that we tend to go in a deeper way. But again, it's all about the people. So if someone that we like so much and that we have conviction that are going to build huge businesses, they can build like something brick and mortar, like a bakery, and we'll invest. So it's all about the people, honestly. But in terms of trends or markets that we're seeing, I'm gonna give you a spoiler of the Atlantico report. Can I? Well, SMB digitization is one that Julio and Anna will bring in a couple of minutes. But yeah, we see a trend that of B2B companies focusing on SMBs, the long tail of companies, and we see that because of the adoption of technology of those small businesses and the inherent inefficiencies, of course. So there are B2B marketplaces, there are SaaS companies tackling problems and inefficiencies of SMBs, which is very exciting and opens up a huge market too. And personally, that's my personal opinion, something that I care a lot about, that doesn't necessarily have converted to a lot of investments.
No, but yeah, go for it. That's the idea.
Well, everything that is tackling climate change is very interesting. It's a global trend. All the politicians, all the states, everyone is moving towards reducing climate change as a whole. So, and I think Brazil specifically, we have a huge leverage in terms of natural resources. So I do think that if there are huge companies using natural resources to tackle climate change, they should be Brazilian. So that's my personal opinion.
I love it, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing more climate tech or clean tech fellows in Latitud. Santi, no need to be exhaustive, but what's getting you excited nowadays?
Yeah, no, so happy to answer with some numbers, but out of our latest early stage fund, 15% of the companies are in clean tech. So we have a waste management marketplace, we have a renewable electricity marketplace, and we invested into a team, former CFO of Nubank and former CEO of 99, that are building this carbon sequestration platform. Amazing. So amazing to see the smartest people in Latin America going after that challenge. We've been seeing a lot of very interesting crypto companies that really tackle fundamental problems in Latin America. So we recently announced our investment into Dollar App, This was a team from like Spain and the US who used to work at Revolut, and they decided the best thing that they could do was build like a USDC neobank in Latin America, so very, very interesting trend. Then we are investing a lot into healthcare, B2B financial services. So yeah, there's innovation all around, and I think that something we're particularly excited about is biotech. And in terms of biotech, Latin America has like very relevant stake of agriculture production, so a lot of innovation is coming from here. We invest into a Chilean company that is fighting like bacteria with phagocytes, with biology, and is working with poultry producers, so very, very exciting times in terms of new technologies emerging.
Thank you, Santi. Marcelo, what about Monashees?
I think overall very aligned with everything that Santi and Isabel mentioned. We try to build point of views, but to educate ourselves and to learn enough that we can meet a founder. We avoid being specialists of anything because this is the moment that we say no to good opportunities. But I think overall, we have done a lot of interesting things on B2B, both B2B fintech, we see a huge opportunity. The past, a lot of things happen on B2C, now B2B, there are a lot of interesting things. We have done a lot of B2B marketplace, pretty much almost like 7, 8 B2B marketplace in the last few years. On top of that, as Santi mentioned, crypto, a lot of interesting companies, a lot of smart founders trying to use the crypto technology to innovate in Latin America. On top of that, I think clean tech is also an interesting area that we are spending a lot of time meeting amazing ideas and amazing founders. I think it's just the beginning. A lot of things will come out of that. And still connected with the B2B, I think software, enterprise. I think there is a new trend happening in Latin America. I think COVID helped a lot to help the companies to digitalize, but it's still a gap. So in the US, an average company will buy like 150 softwares. In Latin America, it's like 12. So there is still a huge gap. It's very hard go to market. But if we see companies like Nowports or Flash, and several other examples in all our portfolios, there is a very interesting trend happening.
That makes sense. And yeah, you had referred to that in the beginning, saying that you're seeing more and more companies just contracting software companies, right? And that's, of course, we love that ecosystem in Latitud. Just to cap things off here, we started saying, okay, how has the ecosystem on the market changed in the last 10 years? If you had to think in very simple ways, like how you see the market and the ecosystem evolving in the 10 years, what are for you the key drivers? Like, is it founder supply? What is it? If you want to start, Belle.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll go back to our hypothesis that I shared early on, why we started Canary. First, talent. So we saw a lot of talented people flowing to tech careers, either taking the risk and starting their own company or joining teams. We see that in a very, that increased a lot. So we're so excited with the new wave of founders and, founding teams that we're seeing. So that's one of the main pillars for us. So again, the future, we see that increasing. So that's really exciting. The second pillar is capital. We shared a little bit here that we're seeing more willingness to global funds to invest in Latin, which means that there are literally more players coming here and taking a chance here too. So that means more capital. And I think the third one, and I invite you all to stay for Julio's and Anna's presentation of the Atlantic Report, are opportunities. Latin is a fertile soil for opportunities. You don't have to build a Tesla company here to have an amazing company and to actually change industries. So for us, those three pillars are still, they remain the same, but they've become stronger, I think. So I'm very, very excited for the next 5-10 years of the market.
Thanks, Belle, and thanks for being here. Sandy, you're in year 1 of Kaszek. How does year 2 look? Or how do you hope that the ecosystem will look?
It's binary. First, thanks Brian, thanks Tomi. It was amazing to be here. Incredible event. Love feeling the energy after those many years, looking at my wall at home. So really, really glad to see this type of event. We were doing with Marcelo this same talk to 500 real estate brokers in Conecta Immobile with Viva Real in 2007.
I think it's happening today.
Yeah. So I think that what's still missing in Latin America, it's more success cases. Like we had Mercado Libre, and I don't know, Kaszek is in a way part of the continuation of that story. We now have Nubank, we have the local that Sergio was here, a few other XP, but we need companies that really build these large independent platforms that can become eventually school for founders, that really know how to scale businesses all the way. They can become acquirers of other tech companies, as you see like Amazon and Google and Facebook doing in the US. I think that as the companies that we have collectively invested in continue maturing, and we are really like still in the infancy of the ecosystem. Whenever we have like 10, 15, 20 large independent companies, I think things will evolve to a different phase of the ecosystem. There will be much more capital, much more founders. The opportunities are there. We live here, and every day our life is painful. I don't know, like paying for a taxi, even with big, still like there's still a lot of things to resolve. I was thinking of this, like paying on e-commerce today, 2022, it's a nightmare. Like if you don't have your Mercado Libre account, you go to a new site, you need to be writing your credit card. It's the most hackable thing in the world.
You two invested in Juno, for instance, addressing that. Yeah.
No, many examples. We still have not solved anything. Like buying and selling homes, it's evolved, but it's still, everything needs to happen. So the problems are there. We need the people, and the people, we need the ecosystem. And those ecosystems come from great companies and a lot of success cases. Endeavor did this amazing survey a few years ago that showed a little bit of this. So we think that we need to evolve to adolescence, and adolescence means like 10 great companies that are already profitable, are already independent, are already public, are world class, and we'll get there.
Yeah,
we're completely convinced.
In a way, it's still early for Meli, for Nubank, for Rappi, for the local. Like we know that a lot of value accrues after IPO, so hopefully that keeps impacting the ecosystem. Marcelo, we have 2 minutes. You probably need to go have some rest, but no, even if you have to take a few more minutes, what would you say the next 10 years look like in Latam for you? What are the main drivers?
Very aligned with Santi. I think we need more successful case. I think the VC market in the US took 40 years to develop, even more. Our model is more similar to China. That was more like 15, 20 years, way faster. And an element part of that is successful case. And this is connected to liquidity. So I think we already have amazing founders. There's capital, there's the market. But at the end of the day, some investors, they have less patience, especially downstream capital. So we're very close. If you look in all the portfolios that we have and other funds, probably like there are like 20 or even more companies that are on track for IPOs. And this is going to be very important for the next wave of tech in Latin America. Because this whole cycle, when you have the liquidity, you bring more talent people, you bring even more capital. We start to have the mafia, like the Rappi mafia, the other kinds of mafias. So we're very excited, but I think this next 3-4 years will be very important to have concrete case. Like the beginning, the middle, and especially the end, not the end, but start to have this liquidity that will show there is possible. It's already a lot of companies like Nubank, Mercado Libre, and others showing there is possible, but we need more of this case, like in China. And we are there. I think the correction in the market probably pushed the finish line like a few kilometers ahead of us, but we're very close, and the pipeline is there, both of talent. So I think the next years in Latin America will be very promising years.
Amazing, yeah, and we agree at Latitud, of course, like, especially on the quality of the founders coming out of all the companies you've been investing for many years. So thank you for being here, the three of you. Appreciate the time.